Maya Jackson was ready for a smooth flight from Atlanta to Washington, D.C. She'd booked first class on flight DL1986, expecting a quiet ride with plenty of time to polish her keynote speech for the National Business Conference. As the CEO of Horizon Innovations, a leading tech company she built from the ground up, Maya was used to high-stakes moments. But nothing could have prepared her for what happened when she stepped onto that plane. The first-class cabin was sleek, with soft leather seats and warm overhead lights. Maya, pulling her stylish carry-on, felt confident and focused. She was headed to seat 2A, which she'd reserved well in advance. But when she got there, someone was already sitting in her spot. James Carter, a man in his early 40s, lounged in the seat like he owned the plane. His tailored suit screamed wealth, and his dark hair was perfectly styled. He swirled a glass of red wine, barely glancing up as Maya approached. When he finally looked at her, his eyes narrowed, and a smug grin spread across his face. "Me, ma'am," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "This isn't your seat. Coach is back there." The words hit like a slap. Around them, the cabin went quiet. Other passengers, executives, entrepreneurs, and business leaders, their conversations cut short. A young flight attendant nearby looked mortified, but didn't move. Maya felt every eye on her, some curious, some sympathetic, and others tinged with judgment. But Maya didn't flinch. She'd faced challenges like this before, people underestimating her because of her race or gender. As a black woman who'd climbed to the top of the tech world, she knew how to handle prejudice with grace. Her voice was calm but firm. "This is my seat, sir. I reserved to it." James didn't budge. He waved a hand dismissively, as if Maya were a minor annoyance. "This cabin isn't for people like you," he said loudly, making sure everyone heard. "Go back to coach." The air in the cabin seemed to crackle with tension. A middle-aged woman in a sharp blazer whispered to her husband, "Did you hear that? That was disgusting." Her husband nodded, but avoided her gaze, too embarrassed to speak up. A couple of younger passengers discreetly pulled out their phones. Sensing this moment was about to escalate, Maya's heart raced, but she refused to let anger take over. She knew losing her cool would only give James what he wanted: a chance to paint her as the problem. Instead, she took a deep breath, stood tall, and pulled out her phone. Without breaking eye contact with James, she dialed a number. "Sarah," she said quietly, speaking to her trusted assistant. "I'm on flight DL19862, DC. Someone's in my seat and refusing to move. Please handle this discreetly." As she hung up, the cabin stayed silent, every passenger waiting to see what would happen next. Maya didn't argue or raise her voice. She just stood there, composed and unshaken, her presence commanding respect. This wasn't just about a seat anymore. It was about fairness, dignity, and refusing to let prejudice win. James, sensing the attention, leaned back in the seat and took a slow sip of his wine, as if to say he couldn't care less. His arrogance was palpable, like he was daring anyone to challenge him. But Maya wasn't playing his game. She knew real power didn't come from shouting, it came from action. The young flight attendant finally stepped forward, her voice shaky but polite. "Mr. Carter, could you please check your boarding pass? There might be a mix-up." James shot her a withering look. "I'm a platinum member," he snapped. "I always sit here. Your system's wrong." The attendant glanced at Maya, her eyes apologetic, but Maya gave her a small nod, as if to say, "It's okay, I've got this." In her mind, Maya was already thinking beyond this moment. She'd faced bias in boardrooms, at conferences, and even in her own company's early days. This was just another hurdle, and she was ready to clear it. The whispers in the cabin grew louder. A man in a suit, a few rows back, muttered to his colleague, "This guy's out of line." His colleague nodded but stayed silent, unsure whether to get involved. The woman in the blazer shook her head, clearly appalled, but like most others, she didn't speak up. Maya stood firm, her resolve unshaken. She wasn't just fighting for her seat, she was standing up for every person who'd ever been told they didn't belong. And as the tension in the cabin thickened, everyone knew this was about to become a moment no one would forget. The first-class cabin of flight DL1986 felt like a pressure cooker. Maya Jackson stood calmly by seat 2A, her reserved spot, while James Carter lounged in it, smirking like he owned the plane. His earlier words, "This cabin isn't for people like you," still hung in the air, stinging like an open wound. Passengers whispered, some shocked, others embarrassed. but no one dared step in. The young flight attendant who'd asked James to check his boarding pass looked flustered. Caught between her duty and his icy glare, James leaned back, rattling his wineglass with a deliberate clink, as if to taunt everyone watching. "I'm a platinum member," he repeated, his voice sharp and entitled. "I always sit here. Check your system again." His tone made it clear he wasn't budging, and he shot Maya a look of pure disdain, as if her presence alone offended him. Maya didn't waver. Her face was a mask of composure, but inside, her mind was racing. She'd built Horizon Innovations from nothing, faced down skeptics in boardrooms, and shattered glass ceilings as a black female CEO. This wasn't her first encounter with prejudice, and she knew reacting with anger would only play into James's hands. Instead, she stood tall, her silence more powerful than any outburst. The cabin buzzed with quiet chatter. A woman in a navy blazer a few rows back leaned toward her husband, her voice low but urgent. "That was so uncalled for. Why isn't anyone doing anything?" Her husband shifted uncomfortably, muttering something about not wanting to get involved. Across the aisle, two young professionals in crisp suits exchanged glances, their phones subtly raised, capturing every second. They knew this wasn't just a seating dispute, it was a moment that could spark a firestorm online. Maya's call to her assistant, Sarah, was already in motion. She'd asked for a discreet solution, and she trusted Sarah to deliver. But as the seconds ticked by, the tension only grew. James took another slow sip of wine, his eyes sweeping the cabin, daring anyone to challenge his authority. To him, this was a game, a chance to flex his status and put Maya in her place. The young flight attendant tried again, her voice trembling but firm. "Sir, I really need to see your boarding pass to confirm your seat." James scoffed, his lip curling. "Do you know who I am? I fly this route every week. I'm not the one who's mistaken." His words were a clear message. His privilege trumped any rules. The attendant glanced at Maya, her eyes full of apology. Maya gave her a small, encouraging nod, her calm exterior unshaken. In her mind, she saw flashes of past battles and who doubted her, colleagues who dismissed her, and the countless times she'd had to prove her worth. This wasn't just about a seat. It was about the respect she'd earned and the dignity she refused to let anyone steal. The cabin's silence was broken by a new presence. From the front of the plane, a tall figure emerged from the cockpit, his crisp pilot's uniform commanding instant attention. Captain Daniel Brooks, a black man with decades of aviation experience, strode into first class with an air of quiet authority. His sharp eyes scanned the scene, taking in Maya's steady posture and James's arrogant sprawl. Two flight attendants and an airport security officer flanked him, their presence signaling that this was no longer a minor issue. Captain Brooks stopped near seat 2A, his gaze locking onto James. "Sir," he said, his voice clear and unwavering, "please present your boarding pass." The words weren't loud, but they carried the weight of someone who'd handled crises at 30,000 feet. The cabin fell silent, every passenger leaning forward, sensing a shift. James's smirk faltered, replaced by a flash of indignation. "Excuse me," he snapped, his tone louder now. "Do you know who I am? I'm a platinum VIP. I sit here every week. Your system's the problem, not me." Captain Brooks didn't blink. He'd seen men like James before, people who thought wealth or status put them above accountability. But Brooks had never bowed to entitlement. To him, fairness and safety were non-negotiable. "Mr. Carter," he said evenly, "this is a flight safety protocol. We need to verify your seat assignment. Please cooperate." James's face reddened, his hand gripping the armrest. "You're seriously making me prove this for her?" He jerked his head toward Maya, his voice laced with contempt. The word "her" landed like a slap, and a few passengers gasped audibly. The woman in the blazer shook her head, whispering, "Unbelievable." Maya stood silent, her eyes fixed on the seat back ahead. She didn't need to respond. James's behavior was exposing him more than any words could. The young professionals kept filming, their faces grim but focused. They knew this footage could be a game changer. Captain Brooks took a step closer, his voice steady but firm. "Mr. Carter, I'm not asking. If you refuse to comply, we'll have to take further action. This is your final chance to resolve this peacefully." The cabin was so quiet you could hear the hum of the plane's systems. James's eyes darted around, realizing every passenger was watching, judging. His arrogance was crumbling, but his ego wouldn't let him back down. He let out a sharp, mocking laugh. "You're going to kick me off over this? Because of someone like her?" Captain Brooks's expression didn't change, but his next words hit like a thunderclap. "Mr. Carter, you seem to misunderstand. Ms. Maya Jackson isn't just a passenger. She's the CEO of Horizon Innovations, one of this airline's key partners. Your refusal to move from her reserved seat isn't just a mix-up, it's a disrespect to a valued customer." The revelation landed like a shockwave. James's face went pale, his confidence evaporating. Passengers exchanged stunned glances, some nodding in approval, others smirking at James's sudden discomfort. The woman in the blazer whispered, "Serves him right." Maya remained composed, showing no hint of triumph. She simply met Captain Brooks's gaze with a subtle nod of gratitude. His words hadn't just defended her, they'd laid bare the truth about respect and accountability. James stammered, grasping for a comeback. This is ridiculous," he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. The power he'd wielded moments ago was gone, stripped away by a pilot who valued fairness over status. Every eye in first class was on him, waiting to see if he'd dig himself deeper or finally give in. The first-class cabin of Flight DL-1986 was frozen in a tense silence. Captain Daniel Brooks stood firm, his calm authority filling the space like a steady anchor. His words still echoed. Maya Jackson, CEO of Horizon Innovations, was no ordinary passenger, and James Carter's refusal to move from her reserved seat was a blatant act of disrespect. James's face had drained of color, his earlier arrogance replaced by a flicker of panic. Every passenger watched, phones quietly recording. As the weight of the moment pressed down on him, James gripped the armrest of seat 2A, his knuckles white. "This is absurd," he stammered, his voice cracking. "I fly this route every week. I'm a platinum member. You can't do this to me." But his words sounded hollow, like a man grasping at straws. The cabin's eyes were on him, some with disapproval, others with quiet satisfaction at seeing his facade crumble. Maya Jackson stood nearby, her posture unwavering. She hadn't said a word since Captain Brooks stepped in, but her presence spoke volumes. Her calm, dignified silence was a stark contrast to James's flailing defiance. She didn't need to argue, her resolve and the truth were enough. Captain Brooks's expression didn't waver. Decades of handling in-flight crises had taught him how to stay composed under pressure. "Mr. Carter," he said, his voice low but unyielding, "this flight won't depart until every passenger is in their assigned seat. You've been asked to comply. If you refuse, you're choosing to escalate this." The two security officers standing behind Brooks shifted slightly, their presence a silent reminder of the consequences. One of them, a broad-shouldered man with a no-nonsense demeanor, spoke up. "Mr. Carter, you can leave the aircraft on your own, or we'll escort you off. It's your choice." James's eyes darted between the officers, Brooks, and the passengers. Staring at him, the woman in the navy blazer a few rows back whispered to her husband, "He's done for." Her husband nodded, no longer avoiding her gaze. The young professionals filming the scene exchanged a glance, their expressions grim but determined. They knew this footage was about to blow up online. James's face twisted with fury and humiliation. To him, backing down now would be admitting defeat not just to Maya, but to everyone watching. His ego couldn't handle it. He let out a bitter laugh, loud enough to startle a few passengers. "You're seriously kicking me off this plane?" For her, he spat the word "her" with venom, glaring at Maya as if she were the source of his downfall. A few passengers gasped, and the woman in the blazer shook her head in disbelief. "Unbelievable," she muttered. The tension in the cabin spiked. Every eye locked on Captain Brooks, waiting for his response. Brooks didn't flinch. "Mr. Carter, this isn't about any one person. It's about respect and safety for everyone on this flight. You've made your choice clear." He nodded. To the security officers, who stepped forward, James shot up from the seat, shoving it back so hard it slammed into the row behind him. Passengers flinched, and a flight attendant nearby jumped. "This is outrageous," he shouted, grabbing his belongings with shaky hands. His designer briefcase slipped, nearly falling, and he cursed under his breath as he scrambled to catch it. Every move was frantic, a stark contrast to the smug composure he'd shown earlier. As he stormed past Maya, he avoided her gaze, but his bitterness was palpable. "You think you've won," he muttered, just loud enough for her to hear. People like you don't belong here. Maya didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her steady, unflinching presence was a rebuke to his words. She simply stepped aside, letting him pass, her expression calm but resolute. The passengers watched in silence, some nodding in quiet approval, others exchanging looks of relief. The woman in the blazer gave Maya a small, encouraging smile, as if to say, "You handled that perfectly." The security officers followed James down the aisle, their steps measured but firm. With every step, the cabin's tension began to ease. Passengers exhaled, their shoulders relaxing as the weight of the confrontation lifted. At the back of first class, one of the young professionals lowered their phone, a determined look on their face. They knew this video would be shared far and wide, a testament to what had just unfolded. Captain Brooks turned to Maya, his stern demeanor softening. "Ms. Jackson, I'm deeply sorry for what you've experienced. Please take your seat." His voice was quiet but sincere, carrying the weight of someone who understood the injustice she'd faced. Maya offered a gentle nod, her eyes meeting his with gratitude. "Thank you, Captain," she said softly, her voice steady. She adjusted her carry-on and settled into seat 2A, buckling her seatbelt with the same composed grace she'd shown throughout. As she leaned back, she felt the eyes of the cabin on her, not with pity, but with admiration. The cabin door clicked shut behind James, and a ripple of relief passed through first class. Passengers began to settle, their hushed conversations resuming, but the atmosphere was different now. There was a quiet respect in the air, a shared understanding of what they'd witnessed. The woman in the blazer leaned toward her husband again. "She's incredible," she said. "I don't know how she stayed so calm." Captain Brooks gave the cabin a final glance before heading back to the cockpit, his stride confident and purposeful. The passengers knew they'd seen more than a seating dispute. They'd witnessed a stand for dignity, led by a woman who refused to be diminished, and a captain who upheld fairness above all. Maya gazed out the window, the tarmac blurring as her thoughts drifted. She knew this moment wasn't just about her. It was about every person who'd been told they didn't belong, who'd faced prejudice and stayed strong. As the plane began to taxi, she closed her eyes for a moment, feeling a quiet strength settle within her. This wasn't the end of the story, it was only the beginning. As the cabin door clicked shut behind James Carter, a wave of relief washed over the first-class cabin of Flight DL-1986. The oppressive tension that had gripped the space began to dissolve, replaced by a quiet hum of respect and awe. Maya Jackson settled into her rightful seat, her movements deliberate and composed. She adjusted her seatbelt and gazed out the window, the tarmac lights reflecting in her eyes as the plane taxied toward the runway. But even as she exhaled, the weight of what had just happened lingered. Passengers stole glances at Maya, their expressions a mix of admiration and curiosity. The woman in the navy blazer a few rows back leaned toward her husband, her voice soft but clear. "She's a class act. I don't know how she stayed so calm through that." Her husband nodded, this time meeting her gaze. "Yeah, she's something else," he murmured, a hint of shame in his tone for not speaking up earlier. Across the aisle, the two young professionals who'd been filming the incident lowered their phones, their faces lit with purpose. They exchanged a quick nod, already imagining the impact this footage would have online. One whispered to the other, "This is going viral. People need to see this." They weren't wrong. The video they'd captured of James's arrogance and Maya's poise was about to spark a firestorm. Captain Daniel Brooks, having returned to the cockpit, left a lasting impression. His decisive intervention had not only resolved the conflict but also set a powerful example of leadership and fairness. As the plane lifted off, the cabin settled into a serene quiet, but the passengers knew they'd witnessed something profound, a moment that went beyond a single flight. Maya leaned back in her seat, her mind swirling with thoughts. She wasn't naive. She knew this incident wouldn't just fade away. Some would praise her, others would criticize, and a few might even twist the story to fit their biases. But for Maya, the truth was simple. She'd stood up for what was right, not just for herself, but for everyone who'd ever been told they didn't belong. As the clouds drifted past her window, she felt a quiet resolve. This was bigger than her, and she was ready for whatever came next. By the time the plane touched down at Dulles International Airport, the story had already begun to spread. The young professionals had uploaded their video to social media during the flight, and within an hour, it was trending. Hashtags like hashtag respect Maya and hashtag no room for prejudice climbed the charts on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Clips of James's hateful remarks, Maya's calm response, and Captain Brooks's commanding presence were shared millions of times, sparking outrage and admiration worldwide. News outlets jumped on the story. CNN ran a segment titled "CEO Stands Up to Discrimination on Flight," while Forbes published an article praising Maya's dignity as a model of leadership. The Wall Street Journal called it a wake-up call for corporate America. Commentators dissected James's behavior, exposing his sense of entitlement, while Maya's composure became a symbol of strength. A prominent activist tweeted, "Maya Jackson didn't just reclaim her seat, she reclaimed respect. This is what power looks like." The post racked up over 1 million likes, but not everyone was on Maya's side. Some online voices anonymous accused her of making a scene or argued she should have just taken another seat to avoid conflict. These comments, though few, stung, revealing the persistent expectation that women and people of color should quietly accept mistreatment. Still, the overwhelming response was one of support, with business leaders, celebrities, and everyday people rallying behind Maya. Captain Brooks also earned widespread praise. The U.S. Pilots Association issued a statement lauding him as a model of integrity, ensuring both safety and dignity for all passengers. His actions were hailed as a reminder that leadership means standing up for what's right, no matter the stakes. Back on the ground, Maya was unaware of the social media storm as she gathered her belongings and exited the plane. Passengers from first class offered her subtle nods and smiles, a silent acknowledgement of her strength. One woman, the same one in the navy blazer, approached her at the gate. "I just want to say thank you," she said quietly. "You handled that with so much grace. I wish I'd said something." Maya smiled warmly. "You're saying something now," she replied, her voice kind but firm. As Maya made her way to the National Business Conference, her phone buzzed with messages from her assistant, Sarah. "Maya, you need to see this," Sarah texted, linking to the viral video. Maya watched the clip in her hotel room, her heart heavy but not surprised. She'd hoped to keep the incident quiet, but now it was public, and she knew she had a choice: shy away or use this moment to drive change. Meanwhile, James Carter faced a reckoning. His company, a major financial firm, was flooded with calls and emails demanding accountability. By that evening, their PR team issued a statement: "We are deeply disappointed in Mr. Carter's conduct and are conducting a thorough investigation." Online, people dug into James's past, uncovering a pattern of entitled behavior that only fueled the backlash. His carefully crafted reputation was unraveling, and he was starting to feel the consequences of his actions. That same night, the airline's CEO, Michael Thompson, released a public apology. "We sincerely regret the injustice experienced by Ms. Maya Jackson on flight DL1986. The statement read, "Discrimination has no place on our flights or in our company. We are taking immediate steps to ensure this never happens again." The airline announced that James's platinum membership was permanently revoked, and his travel privileges were suspended for a year. A bold move that sent a clear message. Thompson didn't stop there. He personally called Maya, his voice heavy with sincerity. "Ms. Jackson, I'm horrified by what happened. I've watched the video, and I'm in awe of your strength. We want to do more than apologize. We want your help to make real change." He invited her to join an advisory council to overhaul the airline's policies on discrimination and bias. Maya listened quietly, her mind racing. She appreciated the gesture, but knew words and promises weren't enough. Change required action, measurable steps. "I'll consider it," she said, her tone polite but resolute. "But I need to see a commitment to systemic reform, not just a reaction to bad press." As she prepared for her keynote the next day, Maya reflected on the day's events. She wasn't just a CEO anymore. She'd become a symbol of resilience, whether she wanted to or not. But for Maya, this wasn't about fame. It was about turning a painful moment into something meaningful, something that could make a difference for others. Maya Jackson stood at the podium of the National Business Conference in Washington, D.C., her keynote speech ready to inspire thousands. But as she looked out at the crowd, she knew her message carried new weight. The viral video from flight DL1986 had transformed her from a respected CEO into a symbol of resilience and dignity. Social media was ablaze with hashtag respect Maya, and her story had sparked a global conversation about prejudice and accountability. Yet Maya wasn't here for the spotlight. She was here to drive change. Back in Atlanta, the airline's response was gaining traction. CEO Michael Thompson's public apology and the revocation of James Carter's platinum status had earned praise. But Maya knew apologies were only a start. During her call with Thompson, she'd been clear. She wanted systemic reform, not just damage control. The airline had invited her to join an advisory council, and after careful thought, Maya agreed, but on her terms. A week later, Maya sat down with the airline's leadership in a private meeting. Her presence commanded the room, not through anger, but through the quiet authority of someone who'd earned her place. "Words are important," she began, her voice steady and sharp, "but actions matter more. If we're serious about change, we need comprehensive anti-bias training for everyone: frontline staff, pilots, and executives, no exceptions." She laid out specific demands: anonymous reporting channels for passengers and employees to flag discrimination without fear, strict penalties for misconduct, and regular progress reports to ensure accountability. "This isn't about one incident," Maya said. "It's about making sure no one, especially women or people of color, feels unwelcome again." Thompson and his team listened intently, nodding in agreement. They knew Maya's involvement was a chance to rebuild trust and set a new standard. "We're committed," Thompson said. "We'll start with your recommendations and report back publicly every quarter." Maya appreciated the pledge, but insisted on timelines and metrics. "I'm not here for promises," she said plainly. "I'm here for results." Meanwhile, James Carter's world was collapsing. His company's investigation uncovered a history of complaints about his behavior, from dismissive comments to bullying colleagues. The public outcry, fueled by the viral video, left his employer no choice. After an emergency board meeting, James was suspended indefinitely, his once powerful role reduced to a cautionary tale. Online, former associates distanced themselves, and his reputation built on years of privilege lay in tatters. For the first time, James faced the truth. His actions had consequences, and no amount of status could shield him. As Maya pushed for reform, she stayed out of the media frenzy. Reporters flooded her inbox with interview requests, but she declined most, choosing only a few platforms to share a message of unity and progress. "This isn't about me," she told one outlet. "It's about building a world where everyone is respected for who they are and what they do." Her humility only amplified her impact, earning her respect as a leader, not a celebrity. But the real power of Maya's story was in the movement it sparked. Across social media, people shared their own experiences of discrimination under hashtags like #SpeakUp and #InspiredByMaya. A Latina engineer posted about being mistaken for a janitor at her own company's headquarters. A black professor shared how students questioned her credentials because of her race. Each story added fuel to a growing wave of awareness, showing how common these injustices were. Maya received hundreds of messages from strangers, emails, even handwritten notes. One, from a young black girl, read, "I saw you on the news, and now I know I can be anything. Thank you for being brave." Maya kept that note on her desk, a reminder of why this fight mattered. Her battle had become a beacon, empowering others to speak out and demand respect. Major companies took notice. Tech giants like Salesforce and IBM reached out, asking Maya to consult on their diversity initiatives. She agreed to a few projects, focusing on organizations serious about change. In every meeting, she emphasized one truth: real progress starts when we confront our own biases and act to fix them. Her words became a rallying cry, inspiring workplaces to rethink their cultures. Months later, Maya boarded another flight, from Atlanta to New York. As she settled into first class, she noticed a young black boy at the cabin door, clutching his father's hand. His wide eyes scanned the luxurious seats, unsure if he belonged. Maya's heart tightened. She recognized that look, the same one she'd had as a child, entering spaces where she felt out of place. Without hesitation, Maya caught the boy's eye and gave him a warm, confident smile. "You're right where you're supposed to be," her expression said. The boy's face lit up, and he whispered something to his father, who nodded proudly. They stepped forward, claiming their seats with ease. Watching them, Maya felt a surge of emotion. Every struggle she'd faced, every doubt, every slight had led to moments like this, where she could help others feel seen and valued. The airline's reforms were underway. With anti-bias training rolled out and new policies in place, Thompson kept his word, sharing progress reports that showed a drop in passenger complaints about discrimination. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, and Maya stayed involved, ensuring the changes stuck. As for James, his suspension became permanent. Stripped of his title, he faded from the corporate world, a stark reminder that privilege doesn't excuse prejudice. His downfall was a lesson. Power is fleeting when built on disrespect. Maya's story didn't end with that flight. It grew into a movement, a call for dignity and fairness that reached far beyond the cabin of DL-1986. She knew change was a marathon, not a sprint. But every step, every story shared, every policy rewritten brought the world closer to justice. Leaning back in her seat, Maya gazed at the sky, thinking of all the people who'd found their voices because of her stand. We all belong, she thought, and we all have the power to make that true.